Hello and welcome to Lynchburg Live. I'm your host, Linda Smith. As Halloween approaches, we start thinking about things like costumes and parties and ghosts and trick-or-treat. But we also start thinking about things that are paranormal. My guests tonight are Tara Bryant, founder of Seven Hills Paranormal Society, and Wanda Pickett, who's a senior investigator. The focus of the society is researching paranormal activity through scientific approach. Tara, Wanda, I'm so delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you for having us.
As we get started, let me just ask either one of you all to tell us what Seven Hills Paranormal Society is.
Seven Hills Paranormal Society is a group of like-minded investigators that came together in 2004, I believe, to basically research reports of activity, unexplained activity, both in commercial settings and residential settings. And so we go out, usually a client will call us and say they're having some kind of activity that they're not really sure what's going on, and they'll call us to come in and either maybe give them some kind of theory as to what it may be naturally, or if we can't really explain it away with natural reasoning, then we might turn to something a little more supernatural or paranormal.
That's really interesting.
It's fun.
All right, you said, what year did you say you started?
2004.
2004, and you've been active ever since then?
We have been active officially since 2007. We actually got our group up and running with some formal investigations. Before that, a lot of our researchers had been together just kind of doing things here and there, but yeah.
So what encouraged you to do this? You're the founder, so what encouraged you to start it? There had to have been something like some event or something that's sort of spurred you on.
Sure, there were several of us actually that sat around the kitchen table of a friend of mine one night and said, you know, we didn't know of another group in the area that was doing this sort of thing, and we had all had our own personal experiences, and that's kind of when, you know, TV started busting at the seams with all of the ghost hunter shows and things like that, and, you know, of course that had a big influence on a lot of paranormal groups that are out there now, but we were seeing a lot of the Hollywood aspects and really wanted to go in with a more scientific approach and really break things apart and learn about some of the reasons why some of these things may be happening as far as geomagnetism and you know, sidereal cycles and things like that. So we really started breaking it apart physics-wise to try to find out what might be causing or triggering some of this activity.
You know, to me that's really interesting because you're not just saying, oh, these are ghosts,
right,
or this is this, or this is something. You're really trying to look at it from the basics and build, yeah. How many members, Wanda, do you all have?
Active?
Active members, yeah.
Active, I would probably say about 20 maybe, active, pretty much, yeah.
Do you guys have specific members who do specific things? Like do you have one member who does basically photography and somebody else who basically does sound equipment, that kind of thing?
Pretty much. I mean, all of us all do the same things pretty much, where we go and do the pictures and run the cameras and stuff. We all basically do it together, but when it comes down to it, sometimes there's like one person that knows a little bit more, and we go, hey, can you help us with that? So, but we all have our own little things that we bring to the table.
What you've got on the table, is any of this lighting or photography stuff that you can just sort of tell us what it is?
This, we have two closed circuit systems that we use, and they are infrared cameras. And there's a theory out there that, you know, if there are spirits or entities, we're not sure what they are, that exist, and perhaps one of the reasons why we see them every now and then and not all the time is because they exist outside of our visible light spectrum. So we have these cameras that actually view in infrared and also ultraviolet spectrums to give us a broader range of what we can see. And so we've got infrared illuminators that, you know, that we use for our night shot cameras, our handheld cameras, and they fit on our cameras, some of them. And so, you know, we try to use as many visual aspects as we can.
Right.
Because people want to see evidence.
Of course they do.
Right. They, you know, you can talk all day about what you felt or what you experienced or what you heard, but unless you have those things recorded and can share them with other people, you've really got a hard case on your hands to try to convince someone.
I'm sure you have. Now, all of your people are volunteers?
Yes.
Okay. And where are you located?
Here
Yeah,
in
Just in
Lynchburg.
Lynchburg.
Yeah, I was gonna say Forest, Lynchburg.
We travel
we're
all
covering
over
all.
though.
Yeah.
We've got members as far away as Pamplin and Roanoke that come to our meetings every month, and we travel as a group, as a team, as far away as South Carolina.
Gosh, I think it's
They're going
close.
to Tennessee this weekend, so.
What kind of investigations do you do?
Right now, we're pretty much limited to typical haunting situations or what people want to conclude as a haunting. We are very open to all kinds of paranormal activity, including, UFOs and cryptozoology and things like that. We all have a different interest. But as far as what we actually investigate, just because it's an open field right now, and so many places are talking about hauntings and ghosts, and it's so mainstream and trendy right now, that's pretty much where our niche is at the moment.
And so much interest into it. It's just easier to that's what we do.
Do you all have regular meetings?
Mm-hmm. Once
When
a month.
and where do you meet?
Once a month, every third Tuesday of the month. We also have Meetup, which is public. Everybody can go in there, check out everything, get on there. It also will tell you, because we put everything out there, let you know what's coming up, but we'll also let you know if it's a public thing or if it's just for the investigators, seniors and all that. But it's all out there for people to see.
We usually meet either at the Forest Public Library or the Lynchburg Public Library, and as Wanda said, every third Tuesday.
And it's open to the public?
Meetings
So
are
it's
open to the
great.
public, yes.
Do you have membership dues?
Yes, we do. And they're $60 a year or $5 a month for people who are interested.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically just to support our website and, for supplies like CDs and DVDs to record evidence on, and our meetup dues and things like that. We've actually gotten a lot of really good members through meetup.com, which is a local kind of listserv for people who have varied interests. So, I would say that that's been a really important recruiting tool for us.
Great. I had not heard the expression meetup,
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of cool when I read it on your website. Now, are you affiliated with a national paranormal group or organization?
I'm actually the president of the National Paranormal Coalition,
Wonderful.
which is it's a group that was started basically by 8 local teams here in the area, from Waynesboro to Southwest Virginia, and I think we have 9 teams now, even as far away as Wilmington, North Carolina. And so we get together once every quarter and meet and just share ideas and experiences and have guest speakers come in, and
That's
it's really
wonderful.
exciting. We have a newsletter that goes out, and we encourage other teams that are out there to join the coalition, just because it is a really good way for individual, maybe smaller teams, to have other resources that they may not be able to have among themselves, that a bigger group can bring in more proliferate speakers, I guess, and have bigger investigations.
So you sort of have a region
Mhm.
of people, and what, 9 groups you said?
9 groups so far, yes.
So far? I think that's wonderful. I mean, at least it gives you an opportunity to share what you found and what they've found. And
Right.
And each one has their own things. Like if any one of our groups get a hold of something that we can't explain, or maybe we can't help them, we'll say, hey, we've got this group in such and such that we can help them out, and put them to that
And
area.
refer other
Refer them
groups.
to them.
And you service this entire area.
Mhm.
Do you ever go outside of the area, or up and down the East Coast, or even to the West Coast, or any of those places
We went
to do
Virginia
investigations?
Beach two years ago.
We've been to Virginia Beach. We've been going to Wilmington, North Carolina. Like I said, our team is going to Old South Pittsburgh Hospital in Tennessee this weekend. Pennsylvania. We've been to Louisiana. Some of our members, Maryland, just wherever, and we as a team, we'll say wherever our members go, SHIPS is with them. And so we don't all have to be there. If our members go and investigate a place, then we like to have them come back and tell us about their experiences.
Local areas that people in our audience might be familiar with. Can you tell us some of the places you've been locally?
Sure. Well, Lynchburg, of course, is where most of us are from, so that's kind of where we like to stay. I'll just kind of run down a list. One of the most active places that we've been here in town is actually Madison Heights at the Hill Woody House, or the Quick House, right across the bridge beside Walmart. And we know the lady that used to own it before she passed, and we'd been in there a couple of times and had some really interesting experiences there. We've also been to the Ward Building, which is the old Masonic Lodge on Church Street. And Sandusky House, actually, we've had an ongoing relationship with for several years, and are actually working with them this Halloween on a public event, which is really exciting for us because now we've investigated it several years ago, but now we have the opportunity to really go in and do an ongoing case study there.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, sound. I know that you do sound equipment, and we're going to give our audience an opportunity to hear some of these things that you've recorded. But when you go into a room and you're doing an investigation, you have your sound equipment set up.
We usually have the cameras always set up. All of us always have our recorders on there, digitally record it, always have on at all times, just to catch things, because pretty much you can say, and everything that you're going to hear, we don't hear with our ears.
That's what I was going to say. Tara told me, you know, we go in there and
Halloween, we actually did some work with Ghost Tech, your friends there, and there was actually, the interesting thing about it is there was a room full of people in this particular room. Mandy happened to have her audio recorder running, as she always does, and no one in the room heard this sound. And only after going back and reviewing the audio did she hear this particular sound. And so there's been some discussion as to what it actually is. Some people think it sounds like a flute. Other people think it sounds like a cat meowing. And again, they actually have, Ghost Tech I know has several EVPs, they're called, electronic voice phenomenon, of what sounds like a cat meowing. So we don't know if maybe there's a ghost cat in Avenel or not. So we'll let you guys be the judge of that.
all right,
In
Phil.
the living room. Some has been donated for a period. Pieces have been donated. Lee's bed is actually not the real bed that he slept in.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that was actually Sue Serino speaking, and then under her voice you hear the doo-doo-doo,
I
you know.
did.
So again, we're not sure what that is. We do know that one of the girls in the Burwell family that used to live there actually did play the flute. They were all, you know, musicians of some sort, and we just found it interesting that no one in the room heard it. We know it wasn't a cell phone. You know, we know it wasn't an alarm going off, because we make sure to, after the fact, when we find something like this, go back and say, you know, is this a possibility? But that one was not. So.
And she brought up a good point. That's another thing that we also make sure that we have no keys on us. We have no cell phones, no nothing, because all the stuff you don't realize we'll pick up. We'll pick up a bunch of stuff. As if you think, ooh, something's trying to communicate.
Your second one.
Okay, you St. Albans?
Oh, St. Albans, which is, I always forget where that's at. Radford. I always want to say Richmond. And we go in there, and it is me and two other investigators, Tom and Rusty, and we are walking, and you know, you kind of just, and there again, we don't hear any of this. We're just walking, have the recorder in our hands, and we're just walking, looking, you know, how things are in and out, because it's very run down. You have to watch what you're doing and looking at, and we're just like, what's here? What's here?
They got ready to leave the room, I think.
Oh,
was
okay.
The situation here, and you have to listen to the whisper. This is what we call a Class B EVP, one that's not very, very clear, that you really can't hear as well without headphones, but you can kind of tell, and I'll let you.
All right, Phil.
And that whisper, you know, again, that's not a great one, but you know, it is one that was important to us because of the situation, because they were actually leaving the room, and I think someone had just said previous to this, okay, well, we're leaving now. Right. And then you hear this whisper come back. It sounds like it says, don't go, don't go.
Don't go.
So
That's wonderful. All right, there's another one.
Mm-hmm. This one, we went to Trans-Allegheny Lunatics Asylum in Weston, West Virginia, which is a really big hot spot among the paranormal community, and there supposedly is the ghost of a little girl that resides here who grew up at the institution, and her name is Lily. I'm not sure if that's really her name or if they just named her that, but one of our investigators had brought Lily some Cracker Jacks and left them in her room for her. And you hear in this clip our investigator Tom going through, you can't really hear what he says because it's very echoey in there, but then you hear behind Tom's voice what sounds like the voice of a little girl, and it sounds like she says, "Lily's not here," to us. There were no female investigators in that end of the building at the time, so we know it wasn't one of us, but it's pretty loud. You can't. It's very muddled but loud.
Because I think someone at that time had said, "I wonder whose room
where Lily is."
Right, whose room or something like it. So it was kind of weird because there's lots of questions, and then we got there and we're like,
All right, let's see if we can hear Lily.
And it's the end. Again, it's very garbled without headphones, but it's definitely not Tom.
Right. And you have to listen. These things that we also have, we have to listen a lot, and then we'll give it off to someone else and say, "What did you hear?" Just because, like, if you just listen to that real quick, people are like, "I didn't hear that."
And you don't want to influence someone. Like, we never tell each other,
We try
"Did
not.
you hear, Lily's not here?" You let everybody kind of hear for themselves
Right.
what they hear, and then you compare notes.
We just hand it off and go, "Did you hear something?" and kind of leave it at that.
That's probably the best way to do that.
Yes.
Yep. All right. And the next one we have is my favorite, of course, because I got it. But this one is at the Major Graham's in Wayne.
Max Meadows.
Max Meadows. All right.
Is this a mansion?
Mhm.
It is. It is.
It's the one on your.
Oh, it's
your
the
screen
one
there.
behind
Yes,
us.
Yep,
that's the
that's
one
the one
behind us.
behind us. This one here is, I did a no-no. You're not supposed to walk anywhere by yourself, but it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I go to sleep easily, so I just looked at Mike and David at that time, and it's an open field, so everybody can see everybody. So I just said, "Hey, I'm just going to walk around a little bit." And there's also, behind that house that you see behind us, there's old slave quarters. And they said that you can see a tall man walking around through there. So I'm like, let me see what I get. So there again, I have my recorder in my hand and walk. And I'm just doing what I always do. "Thank you for letting us be here," this and that. And I'm walking, where I have them to my back. So of course, I don't know how far I'm going. And if you could hear it a long ways, you could hear the road, yeah,
Trucks.
the highway and stuff. So that's what makes this really nice, because you can hear all that, and then this is like over top of it. But I don't really want to say what it.
And she got spooked. I think that was
Yes.
the situation.
I was
she got
leaving.
spooked.
Yeah, I was leaving and said thank you and this and that, and then you know how you feel that somebody's either watching you or they're walking with you, and I was like, okay, I'm going to leave now. So I do that, and then when I do that, that's actually when you hear.
When you hear this.
Can't wait to hear it.
Still gives me chills.
And I don't think that there's anybody who doesn't hear, "I want to go with you, go with you."
Yeah.
I mean, that's just so obvious.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we were talking earlier, I think if you really listen to it and you hear the dialect of the voice, just the fact that she was in the slave quarters at that time, and you go back and listen to this, I mean, it's pretty overwhelming.
I imagine when you catch something like that it has to be so exciting.
Yes.
Especially.
Right. And like I said, it at that time, you don't think you're getting anything. You're like, wow, nobody wants to talk to us tonight. Nothing's going on and this and that. But then when you get it, it's very exciting.
You come back later and listen to your audio, and you hear this, and you know that you were just there, or you see the shadow on the video, and you had just walked through there. It can be a little disconcerting, but.
But it's fun. That's what we do.
You all have brought a lot of pictures, and even if we don't get to all the interview questions, I want the audience to see the pictures. So, Phil, if you'll go on and start those pictures, we'll get these girls to tell us what they are.
No, this one is just Randy. It's a reflection of Randy.
Just Randy.
I thought that is a really good ghost
That's
reflection.
the holy grail of apparition
Yes.
pictures right there. No, some of these pictures, like I said, we have a really, really stringent training program that we use for our investigators, and we have a lot of examples that we use for that. We get this kind of picture all the time, where there's a reflection in a window or a reflection in a mirror or something, and we just wanted to give an example of, you can get this kind of thing, and it's explainable.
That's beautiful.
This is at Avenel, and what we're looking at here, there's in the corner there behind the desk, there's a dark shadow. What's interesting about this is shadows don't usually excite us. We know shadows, and we know orbs, which is the lighter color there in the center. What's interesting about this is the only light in this room at the time came from that chandelier.
My goodness.
Now, the chandelier and the bright light that you see is actually from my camera flash. There was no backlight. There was no light for that shadow to be my shadow from the balcony. And if you look at the angle of that shadow, it does not match the light source. So we're really not sure, you know, what that is. It can't be the desk because the angle is wrong, coming from the light source.
And this is Avenel House in
This
Bedford.
is historic Avenel in Bedford, yeah. And that's just a pretty one. That's from Sailor's Creek. We had some interesting EMF work at Sailor's Creek, and that's the electromagnetic field that we measure. And sometimes we feel like that can be used to communicate, because if there is a spirit or a manifestation, they may be using a force that isn't readily apparent to us, which is why we have all these neat gadgets and things like that to measure all these things. But I put Sailor's Creek up there because we really did have almost what I would call a conversation with something that we
Right.
couldn't see with
Cool.
our EMF meters.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's Sailor's Creek also.
It is. We love that tree.
What does EMF stand for?
It's the electromagnetic field.
Okay.
And we have a couple different meters that measure that. This again is a training photo. The anomaly that we get, you know, all the time from people looking at photographs, that's a hair.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a hair, and it's so close to the field of view on the camera, the flash distorts it and makes it a blur. Now this one was actually taken by Rick Yules of Bedford Paranormal. This is at Trans-Allegheny Lunatics Asylum. And if you look down there in the left-hand corner, way down there, you see at first what appears to be a shadow sitting on the floor with his knees on his, with his elbows on his knees. That's what we got from there. And I've got a blown, I hope it's the next one that's the blowout of that, yes. What we know is that upon further investigation, that shadow figure or whatever it is was actually a bunch of trash bags. However, the anomaly, if you look directly behind there, looks like a man sitting there wearing a Confederate cap of some sort, leaning up against the wall. And that was actually not seen. We were so involved in the shadow in front of him,
That
we
you
almost
didn't see
missed
that.
that. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And you know, this was actually in the Confederate section of the hospital where lots of people had personal experiences. So this capture is really interesting. This is Major Graham's mansion again.
Is that the one that's behind us?
That's the one that's behind us,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you have a charge for investigations that you do?
No, we do not. We don't charge for any of our services, as a matter of fact.
Wonderful.
This is, again, a training photo. We get so many orb pictures that is basically just dust or debris or moisture,
I
bugs,
think
all
that was
kinds
all
of
just
things.
Really the fog and stuff. It was
Yeah,
really-
and
that
that's
was
just
really
moisture.
Cool.
Pretty picture.
Yeah.
One of our cool ones.
Again, an orb picture. That's a beautiful orb, but
Mhm.
we know it's dust. This was at St. Albans Psychiatric Hospital, and you know, if there was a spirit in orb form that was ever going to attach itself to someone, it would be Randy.
Yeah.
So,
Are you ever frightened?
you know, we've been startled a lot.
Yeah.
At Trans-Allegheny, I had an extension cord ripped out of my hand, literally ripped out of my hand.
And you could see it ripple,
you could
because she was
see it
fussing at
ripple.
me, saying,
I thought
get
she
off
was
of
standing
it.
on
I'm
it.
nowhere near it.
That's so weird.
But the only time I've ever been afraid was in the basement of St. Albans, and only because I could hear everyone above me, and I needed a reel for an extension cord, so I was yelling to them to bring me a reel, and no one could hear me. So it was just, I was so disconcerted that no one could hear me right beneath them. That frightened me more than anything I had seen or experienced.
Now, this is your full team?
This is, yes, most of our team.
And the house we had before that, that was
Sandusky.
Sandusky?
That was Sandusky, yes, historic Sandusky,
But yeah.
which again, you know, we are doing this thing on the 21st. This again is a training photo, and so many people tell me that they see a face in the window of this door.
I see a face in the window of this door.
However, there's no window in that door.
Oh.
That door is open, and that is actually a piece of duct work.
Okay.
And it just happens. We call this matrixing, where people see things that, you know, their mind wants to put things in a box.
Right.
And they want to see, relate to whatever that shape is. Again, this is possibly matrixing. This is from St. Albans. And if you look on the left-hand side in that doorway, you know, you can very vividly see a person standing there with his hand hanging down and his legs. But, you know, if you look at the wallpaper and things like that, then, you know, you can kind of debunk that one as well.
We do that a lot too. We debunk ourselves.
This is one of the more interesting ones that we've gotten. Trans-Allegheny Lunatics Asylum again. If you look at that second door on the left at the bottom, There's some kind of something there. We're not really sure what it is. We call this picture the finger of God. But you see this thing across the doorway, and I think the next photo is probably a daytime shot of this same door there in the red where that anomaly is not. The next picture is a blow up of this where you can kind of see it a little bit better, and you know, we have no idea what that is, but we know that it's not there in the daytime. And there's almost a funhouse effect in this particular picture where it actually looks like it's covering the bottom part of the door. So we've had, you know, other team members and other teams look at it, and really no one has an explanation for it. We don't know what it is, but we know that it is some kind of anomaly. This is at the Ward Building on Main Street, or Church Street, I'm sorry. It's a beautiful building.
Wonderful
And there we are.
pictures. Do you all have a website?
We do.
If you could tell us what that is, because we only have several more minutes left.
Yeah, it's www.sevenhillsparanormal.com.
How do you deal with skepticism?
Well, we are probably the biggest skeptics, quite honestly. We are harder on our evidence than anyone else is. And, you know, I think there's a saying that people who believe don't need proof, and people who don't believe, you know, you can't ever provide enough proof. So if you're a skeptic, that's great.
If anybody is interested in being a part of what you do, what do they do about that? Just contact you through the website or?
Through the website, start coming to meetings. Like I said, we do have a very stringent training program that we put everyone through, and that's really to make sure that people are serious and dedicated about what they do and what we do.
Do you ever feel like you're in danger?
Well, when you walk through St. Albans and there are syringes and shotgun shells on the floor, yeah, and the ceiling's falling apart. But
I didn't think about that.
we're mostly more worried about vagrants than we are spirits.
And that's why, you know, we always say that one thing, you do not go anywhere alone. You always should have somebody with you.
Now, you have an investigation team. You go out on investigations, but that's not open to the general public. You have to have some sort of training to do that.
And that's mostly for liability purposes, but
And safety.
and safety and just knowledge.
What's the farthest distance that you all have gone to do a best investigation?
Probably Trans-Allegheny. That's in the top part of West Virginia so far. Again, this weekend will be a further trip. We're going to Old South Pittsburgh in Tennessee.
Now tell us about the Lynchburg Ghost Tour. What is that?
That is a tour that we actually provide year-round. A couple of years ago, we tried it at Halloween for a few days. It was hugely successful, but it was so much work. You know, we've got so many other things going on. On Friday the 14th of this season, actually, we're doing a workshop for the Parks and Rec, for Lynchburg Parks and Rec. So, and then the 21st, of course, we're doing the event with Sandusky, Historic Sandusky. So just have a lot of things going on. We do private tours year-round, and people can contact us through the website if they want to set something up.
I think that's wonderful, and I appreciate so much you all being my guest and showing us this equipment and showing us these wonderful pictures and letting us listen to things that may or may not be there.
Right.
And good luck during the Halloween season. And you are going to Avondale House? Avenel?
Not Avenel. This year we're working with Sandusky.
Okay,
I think
that's
Avenel's
just
doing
it.
something different.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having
Time
us.
went by fast.
It sure did.
All right. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show and have a happy and interesting Halloween. My next show will feature a Lynchburg Police Department detective who spends his vacation teaching crime scene investigation and forensics to law enforcement officers outside the United States. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.